because they're so right now. I was just reading in the daily news, it was talking about how AI is going to be taking over a lot of jobs in 2030. The worldwide businesses have said they're going to drop hiring people by 30%. And I know that Gen Z and all these other generations like are contemplating like, what am I to do now that these entry jobs are disappearing? And these are things that, as a site coordinator, as an after school enrichment instructor, how are you bringing these programs and how are you going to open up the horizons to actually start thinking critically? And now post pandemic, there's a lot of things that affected the kids, and the reading and math report card have come out, and they've mentioned that you know, scores have dropped down drastically. And now, they're just like, what is happening? And, is it the kids? Is it the education? Is it the parents? It's obviously it's a combination of everything. Post-pandemic, kids were staring at social media. They were online. They weren't socializing. All these things, they come into they come into context when you're actually going into a job or learning something. So as a site coordinator, it's very important. What you do is very important. Improves academics, enhances the in-school engagement. When you get out there and you socialize, helps restore that social and behavioral. Having them learn to socialize again, having them learn to speak. To socialize with each other. A lot of them don't know how to have those conversations. And do this all in a safe environment, making sure you're not in that panic zone, making sure you're in that learning zone. And yeah. But I'm gonna pass this on to Liz, and she's gonna go ahead and start giving you the tools that we're gonna go in. Oh, more importantly, what do you want to get out of this workshop? What are you looking for? Once you go ahead and drop that in the chat, we are going to drop our agenda in there so you can kind of see what we're going to be covering and all the acronyms that we're going to be talking more in place. So we're going to talk about challenges, we're talking about behaviorals, we're going to talk about our wins. But Liz is going to go ahead and drop that in the chat so you can check it out. But I know that there's other workshops going on. So if this is something that you're interested in, please stay and participate with us. We won't be hurt if you leave because we know there's a lot of other workshops going on that are really important.
Give me 1 minute and I'm going to send you guys that key takeaway so you can follow along. All right, and that is in there for you. It's a PDF. Everybody should be able to read it, but if you can't read it, don't be afraid to tell me and I'll get you something that you can read. Now looking in the chat, the question is, what do you want to get out of this workshop? And I would love to know. I can hear it if you'd like to say it out loud. I can read it if you want to pop it in the chat. Feel free to let me know. Anybody gonna post? Let's see, looking through. All right, we'll move on and we'll come back to that. So when we think about the goals of OST education, particularly at Parker Anderson, I think of two primary goals. One is to engage the student through fun, hands-on, first-time experiences that spark excitement, right? I want all of my students leaving the classroom to have this feeling of excitement, adventure, something to take home at the end of the day. When they have that excitement, we are helping build long-term skill development, right? I teach a kids cooking class, and one of the things I love is when I teach them how to make a pinwheel sandwich or a parfait, something simple, particularly for elementary school students. When I give them that opportunity, they come back the next week and they tell me, I made parfaits for my mom and dad, and they said they want one every day for breakfast now. They're having that ability to do something themselves. They're taking agency over their learning. Our other focus is on a social emotional growth. We want them to develop life skills, self-management, and help create a dynamic environment where students can explore. We want them to explore, we want them to connect with other students, connect with adults, and then thrive. So explore, connect, and thrive are the other three main goals. But that comes with its own set of challenges. I know for a lot of us, particularly us at Parker Anderson, we have these students once a week for an hour over 8 weeks. So there are certain things we can't account for, especially on that first day of classes. We never know who is going to be in our classes, who is going to show up day to day. Every day is a new adventure. So that means that we kind of encounter and have to jump over these hurdles every class, every day. The four main hurdles we've noticed were student engagement and motivation, classroom management and behavior, planning, preparing, and adapting to learning, and then time management and the lesson pacing. Have there been any other challenges that you guys have encountered? And if so, please drop them in the chat because I would love to talk about them. Monique wants people to learn something new. We got a heart there. Any particular challenges, Monique, that you faced? Mm-hmm.
It would help to unmute my mic. Yeah, I think that it's teaching across different age gaps and trying to make the lesson relevant for someone that's in kinder all the way up to my fifth graders.
Yeah. Question here, who does in this group have a group of really broad ages, stretching from TK all the way to middle school? That's what we have primarily. You can just put the hand up signal on the chat just so I can see how many of you have broad age groups. Good. Good, good. So that being said, with these challenges, we've also identified 5 key qualities of a great OST instructor. So we believe that OST, at the heart of OST programs are the instructors, the people who are with the children every day or every week, once a week for an hour, depending on it. But they're the ones with them every day who are really helping develop these life skills, these learning environments, and these structures. We believe the key qualities are passion and enthusiasm, flexibility and adaptability, communication skills, empathy and patience, and leadership and problem solving. Passion and enthusiasm is the first thing that draws students into your classroom. If you are passionate, if you are enthusiastic, if you are positive, you are setting the tone for the classroom. Because of the broad age groups that we deal with typically, we are required to be more flexible and adaptable, particularly in our lesson planning. We can't guarantee that we're going to only have kinder through second grade, and we can't guarantee that we're only going to have fifth and sixth graders. So we really need to be adaptable when we enter the classroom. Communication skills mean everything in the classroom. If you are clearly communicating with your students, you are setting the tone, you are setting the expectations, you are taking care of the entire class. Empathy and patience is really something that a lot of schools themselves are implementing right now, different social emotional learning objectives, different embracing diverse learners across the board. So we really want to tap into that in ourselves and be able to bring that into our students. And then leadership and problem solving, I think, is something every teacher has to have. We are the leaders of the classroom, and we are the ones encountering problems as they arise, whether that be a mistake on your list of supplies for the day or an additional add-on you didn't know about. These are the things that we just naturally have to impose. So what we are going to do, what we aim to do in this presentation, is take these challenges, tell you what qualities you can use to overcome these challenges, and give you the toolkit for how to use them. And I like this quote. Naomi picked it out. The influence of a great teacher can never be erased. And I know that all of you, when you entered the chat and you popped in that emoji, you had one specific teacher in mind. Mine is always Mr. Quist, my history teacher. He was a little nutty, but he was so good and so passionate about teaching history. And we never knew what to expect in that classroom, but that was kind of the structure of it, and I loved that. So So we are going to go over the first challenge. And the first challenge, again, is planning and preparation. So when we're preparing our lessons for these after-school programs, whether it be cooking, art, math, science, whatever it is your instructors or you might be teaching, there are lessons that do have to be implemented. So when we correctly plan for lessons, we are embodying flexibility and leadership. We're accounting for all the different options that might happen within our classes, and we're prepared to lead the class with us. And we just want to make sure that when we are preparing lessons, we're ensuring consistency, we're keeping students engaged, we're balancing that structure and flexibility, and we're keeping it student-centered. We have a totally different approach than a typical classroom teacher. There aren't very many metrics for after school or OST education. So we don't have the problems of getting them all to pass a standardized test. What we get to do is meet them where they're at and really focus on the student, on the individual student and the student group as a whole. So we use at Parker Anderson is the COPE framework. We use COPE to cope with all of the different problems we might encounter during class. So our C in COPE is content, our O in content, our COPE is objective, our P in COPE is process, and our E in COPE is environment. So we want to address the content, be flexible with the objective, address the process, and create the student-centered environment. So the first C is content. And what we do to address content with a large group of students of various ages is we use tiered instruction. So tiered instruction, as you can see on the screen, there's 3 tiers. There's tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Tier 1 is our general education. Anybody approaching this topic this way can engage. So it's the most basic level of the lesson outcome. Tier 2 is it's slightly more advanced, right? So if I'm thinking that tier 1 is going to be great from everybody from TK through 5th grade, though maybe a little simple for 5th grade, but everybody can do it. Tier 2 is really my 2nd through 4th graders. Now, tier 3, the most advanced, is my 5th and my 6th graders. So when we're thinking about this, we want to think about how to apply it, right? So when I'm applying the tiers, when I'm looking at my lesson and I'm looking at the different tiers, I want it to be choice-based. I want to have the ability for my students to choose which tier to engage with. And I want excuse me, my computer's acting up. And I want varied resources for all of them. I want a variety of resources they can engage with to learn at their own pace. So an example of a tiered instruction, maybe I have a lesson where the learning objective is to demonstrate the life cycle of a butterfly. Well, in tier 1, in our beginner level, the students will receive pre-cut images and labels of each stage of the butterfly life cycle to paste on a diagram. Very simple. Anybody can do that, right? I could do it, Monique could do it, Naomi could do it, we could all do it. And I know very little about the life cycle of a butterfly. I'll clarify that much. And the intermediate level. So again, this might be our 2nd through 4th graders, our third and 4th graders. So the students are going to then receive a diagram, and it's going to be blank spaces on each stage for them to label themselves. Okay, so now they're going to have more agency. It's going to be a little more challenging, but not overwhelming. We're still in that learning zone that we were talking about before. And then the tier 3 for my 5th and my 6th graders, this is where we go way more advanced. So they're going to now create a poster. They're not going to have any sort of guidance on this. They're going to be given the information and then they're going to create themselves. So on this poster, they could do drawings or images or written descriptions, whatever they would like. But again, that's more advanced. So this one, I wouldn't give that project to the TK through 2nd graders. That would be way too complicated for them and it would get a little crazy. But for my 5th and 6th graders, this gives them the agency over their learning, matching their attention spans. The second O is objective. So what that is outcome flexibility. When I have a learning objective and I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, today I don't know how many students I'm going to have. I don't exactly know what's going to happen in this class. I can say, I can provide myself with 4 or 5 outcomes that I think are acceptable and get the general expectation of the learning objective. So again, this is flexibility. So I want dynamic learning goals, meaning I'm going to have 4 or 5 different learning goals. I just want them to hit one. And if they get partway to one, that's also fine. And this also means I might have some extension activities for really advanced students. But the most important part is that I'm going to be checking in consistently with the students, seeing how they're doing, because when I check in, I am able to adjust their learning objectives. I'm able to have that outcome flexibility. So let's say I have this one class. So it's a STEM class. It's building bridges. I'm going to use different materials. They're going to learn about engineering principles. But the goal is they have to build a bridge using only popsicle sticks, and it has to hold at least 5 pounds. The success in this case is measured by whether or not the bridge meets the weight requirement. Well, that might not be great for all of my students. So I'm going to have a couple different background outcomes that I think are acceptable. One is the artistic outcome, where we look at all of the different possible bridges that have ever been built, and I ask them to creatively build a bridge using different materials or using popsicle sticks. Now, this could be I ask them to build the Golden Gate Bridge and let them try to do that, or I give them examples of different bridges that are architecturally beautiful and ask them to take different elements and put them all together. I could have a presentation-based outcome where they try a bunch of different materials and then they let us know in front of the entire class what materials worked and what materials didn't work. A popsicle stick bridge might be a little better than a toothpick bridge. Who knows? Then there's a traditional engineering outcome, right? Where they talk about the successes and the failures, what worked, what didn't. Were they able to actually get the bridge to meet the weight requirement? And then the analytical outcome, which is more of an exploration. That exploration being, okay, I'm going to analyze everything. I'm going to find the pros and cons of a popsicle bridge, a toothpick bridge, a spaghetti and marshmallow bridge, and let them know what is best. But any of these outcomes would be okay with me because I am looking at the overall objective and I'm seeing that they're trying these new things. Okay. The next in the COPE process is the scaffolding method. So it's very simple. I believe every teacher uses this. It's I do, we do, you do. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you how to do the math problem first. Then we're going to all do one together. And then you are going to do a few by yourself. Very, very, very simple. But there are some steps and tips for scaffolding. We know we want to model the activity. We know we want to do a guided practice. We know we want to do independent work. But one of the main tips for the scaffolding method is that we don't give them yes or no answers. Instead, when they ask a question, we answer with a question back, or we use open-ended questions rather than just giving them the answers. So what do you think you do next when it comes to a math problem? What do you think the outcome is going to be? Everything is open-ended, so they're taking agency over their learning again. So I'm going to ask a question. I would love if people would participate in this. But if you had to choose a learning objective from dribbling a basketball, folding origami, solving a math problem, or painting a flower, I don't know what classes we all teach, but if you could pick one from any of these, how would you apply the scaffolding method? And then what questions would you ask the students to recognize or to notice if they're making progress? So you can answer in the chat. I know it takes a little while for the chat to come up on my end, so.
Or
And just
we can
choose
take
one.
verbal. We can take
You
verbal
can
answers.
take verbal too, if they're interested. If you do think you're interested, go ahead and you can just turn your mic on and call out. This is like the waiting game. Naomi, did you have an answer?
No, I was just, no, I don't have an answer. I was trying to fix my thing. No, but I think we should move on.
Okay. So for me, I'm going to go back really quickly. Let me see if I can. For me, if I'm dribbling a basketball, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show them how to dribble the basketball, show them what hand positions, what my hand's supposed to look like, what my legs are supposed to look like, feet shoulder width apart, and pass the basketball lightly back and forth. Now I might have them pass back and forth with a partner or dribble around the court. We'll all do it together. And then I will let them, maybe it would be drills or something like that, where they one at a time have to dribble the basketball up and down a line. Okay. So then I might ask open-ended questions like, what were some of the challenges you had dribbling a basketball? Because typically for our elementary schoolers, there are a lot of problems dribbling a basketball, and there are still some problems I have today. So I would love to know what they thought their challenges were. What was the hardest part of dribbling a basketball? What was the easiest part of dribbling a basketball? And letting them go ahead and respond in favor. But you could apply that to folding origami, solving a math problem, or painting a flower in the same way. The E in COPE is environment. How do we create a student-centered environment? And that is via the jigsaw method. So we apply the jigsaw method by thinking, okay, if I separate all of my students into small groups, each of them are going to be a piece of the puzzle. So I start by separating my students into small groups. Then I separate the learning objective into sections, and then I help them facilitate contributions, right? So if the example is, and I will show you, students are going to demonstrate understanding of different ecosystems found all over the world, I might separate my students into 6 different groups. Group 1 will focus on the tundra, group 2, the rainforest, 3, desert, savanna, estuary, so on and so forth. Each of those groups is going to work together to understand and perfect the ins and outs of these different ecosystems. Then I'm going to walk around, make sure everybody's contributing, everybody's engaging. We're going to come all together and we're going to share what we know. That means the students are being both the students and the teachers in this scenario. It's very student focused. It's very inclusive. That's what we want. We want them. Again, the OST programs are wonderful when we're developing student agency. So process and practice. And this is where I'm going to separate you guys into breakout rooms. So I hope that once you're in the breakout rooms that you'll talk to each other a little bit. I'd love you to use the COPE, C-O-P-E method to adapt one of the following lesson objectives. So one could be that students will compare and create realistic and abstract art. And the other will be that students will be able to identify and describe the different ecosystems. So you don't use the same jigsaw one I used. You can take one part of COPE. You can take all of COPE. Let us know what you come up with. I'm interested to see. And Vanessa, whenever you're ready, you can send them in.
Sure. I think Naomi was.
It's,
Oh, Naomi, I'm sorry.
the rooms are opened.
Cool.
You want to put in the chat again what they should be doing, since you won't be able to see it on the, oh. Liz and Monique split into a room.
Oh, they did.
I
Um,
mean,
they could bring themselves out. I mean,
yeah,
have to.
not our main session. Yeah, and then move her to room 3.
It's
There we
12:30. How long did you want them in that room? Just so I jot down the time.
Sorry about that, Liz. It didn't have an option for me to, so I just did the 2 rooms. This one will be 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, maybe shorter if, I'm not sure if they're actually,
It told me to go back to the main room.
yeah, I brought you back.
Oh, okay.
I brought you back. Sorry, there was no option for me not to have you on there, because it assigned it automatically. So
Okay.
don't join it.
Oh, I thought you wanted us to kind of help the conversation along. No?
I guess we can if you want. Let's just see how this goes. And
Okay,
if it, then yeah,
okay.
Liz.
Let's-
They're DOL.
Well, there's 10 people participating. So we'll just split it up to 2 groups.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. We weren't getting too much participation
Yeah.
when
Let's
we're
just see how
asking, so
this
that's why I was.
goes. If people come back, and if they don't, or if they don't have much to say, then we'll just keep it here. We'll have the conversations.
Okay.
To keep it going.
I'm gonna start calling on random people.
Mm,
Find out.
remember, this is recorded. Nice. That threw me off, Vanessa, when I was in the middle and it said recording started.
I'm sorry.
Mhm.
I know I was like, I meant to say like, oh, I need to record this. And then
Yeah.
noticed that I paused it and then I didn't restart it. And then I restarted and I was like, oh no, I didn't hear it, but I was like, I bet you they heard that weird robot voice. Everybody was all like, okay, so
Yeah, no, that happens all the time. That's okay.
good. Y'all are doing great. I mean, these places, some people just like to be like sit and listen, like they're not
I'm
always.
totally guilty. I've been in so
Me
many
too.
thing, and I was like, oh, that really sucks for them. And here I am, karma,
I'm thinking too, this might be their lunch break.
Right.
Yeah.
Lunch is right after this, but yeah, it is lunchtime right now for sure over here. Um, okay, let's see. It is 12:32, and y'all put them in breakout rooms at 12:30.
Okay, so
Okay.
I'll broadcast a message. Let's say 2 minutes.
Got it.
We'll bring him back. You're doing great, Liz.
Yep.
Keep it up. Ask me and Monique questions and we'll play with you.
Cool.
Yep, we'll
Cool.
just do it like that. We'll make it flow.
We're gonna pass off to Monique next after this.
Yeah.
Love this portion.
The time management one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's a weird one,
Really?
okay.
That's what you like?
It's because we always struggle with time management.
It's weird how when you go into teaching, like you use these methods and then obviously they have a name to it. And you're just like, wow, that's interesting.
Well, I find that a lot of it is intrinsic once you've been in a lot of
Right.
classes. It's like, okay, I do have to do this. I do. The first day, though, all bets are off. I had a teacher tell me one time, the first time you teach a lesson, it's terrible. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So we had 2 groups, and I would love if one person from each group could just call out vocally and share what they talked about, what objective they chose, and what they planned on doing. So let's see. All right, then I'm going to come back to you later. Monique, give me an example.
Okay, so can you refresh our memories and put those up? The 2
Yep,
examples
they're
that
right
we
here.
choose from? So students will compare and create realistic and abstract art, is the one I'll go with because that's one I'm more science. So I would lean towards the other one, but I'm going to go with the one that's out of my comfort zone and think about the learning zone of that. So when I think about realistic art, I want the objective to be that whatever medium of art I use, that it's recognizable. And I still want to be able to incorporate someone that may feel panicked around, I can't fix something recognizable. And we can have them choose that they can paint or that they can use construction paper and cut or that they can use air modeling clay. So I would be able to have all these mediums that they could use and choose from and tell them that they get to let their mind be open and creative and be able to either create something that they want to see, that people are wondering, and it makes thought provoking kind of contact with the material, that it's abstract, or that it's something they recognize, like a dinosaur or a flower, or one of the games that they like to choose, Among Us, a Pokemon, or something like that. So then it enables different ages on how they like to scope something to participate. And it also may allow more creativity, and they'll be able to come in and present that. So kind of the jigsaw method as well.
I love that. Naomi, you have an idea?
Well, my background is science, so with whenever I take kids out, it's always with science, I always engage them into that model. So like for instance, if I was talking about tide pools, I'd have one kid walking this way, another kid walking another way, and another kid pretending they're somebody floating in the water. And what do you do? Why is there a tide pool? And so that's how I would apply the sciences. I would just allow them to be my model in this.
Love that. I love that. All right, I'm going to pass it off to Monique because she is going to address time management.
Again, my favorite.
I know your favorite one, Naomi, I know we all have problems with.
All right. Well, the challenge can be time management, particularly when you're dealing with a lesson across different ages, age range, and what have you, because you want to be flexible in how you're delivering it, but you also want to make sure that they are getting the learning objective out of it. So when we correctly manage our time, we're actively embodying our leadership, adaptability, and communication skills. So some methods that we have been able to use are looking at the opening and the closing and the transition times, is, the three things we definitely can control. Our techniques that we've been using are wins, and I'll go into explaining what wins is: up, and away, and count and move. And these are quick ways that we is hopefully able to stick in your mind. And then as I go through them, it'll make sense for how we use this. Wins is used for opening our classrooms. Can we go ahead and go to wins? So WINS, another acronym. I love acronyms because then they kind of stick better. I don't know about you guys, but WINS, we're saying W is for welcome, I is for introduction, N for niceties, and S for safety. So that's what WIN stands for. And how do we apply? We want to make sure that we're planning appropriate for the time and using audio and visual cues. So when we welcome someone in, we want to make sure that we are setting the tone for the classroom by making eye contact with the students as they're coming in. We're calling them by name. And the more that you are able to do that, the more that they will focus and pay attention in class, because they're like, oh, I know Vanessa's name. Vanessa is, I'm saying her name, and now she feels more of a personal connection to me as a teacher. So she's more apt to pay attention. So we want to try to, in our welcome, make sure that we're making eye contact and we're using names as we, remember them, could do them. We're meeting them at the door as they're coming in. Introduction, you want to make sure that, one, you're introducing yourself, but also whatever content you want to present. So it can also be a review of the prior content, and you're building on the prior content to the next step that you're in. You also want to use that time to introduce any changes that might happen or the objective we're going to learn. For niceties, we want to make sure that we're setting aside a short amount of time to build rapport and check in on the students, that we're providing reinforcements for class expectations so they know, how we want to the class to flow, what's expected to them for their behavior, creating that structure, because as long as kids have structure, they're more apt to act within that structure and know what's next. If you know what's next, then you're more apt to pay attention and keep up with what's going on. And also you want to make sure we are in safe environments. So whatever safety tips are necessary for the class, whether that there's some just entering, you're saying where to put your backpacks, and you're saying, you want them in a set area so nobody's tripping over them. If you're using tools in a classroom, whether that's a basketball, like we're dribbling, what we're going to learn, we talked about that. And you're saying, please don't throw the basketball at someone and they don't know it's coming. Don't throw them at their face, or, those type of things. One of the classes I love to teach is Spy Kids. They get a kit. We tell them that when the kit has tweezers, we tell them, we're not using these tweezers to pinch each other. It's going to be used to pick up evidence and what have you. So, and it has gloves so we can keep our fingerprints off things. We're saying, okay, we don't want to be blowing up. We don't want the plastic around our mouths or rubber around our mouths. So whatever safety tips are necessary. And that's how we think about welcome, introduction, niceties, and safety. Next. And then we said one of the things we obviously control as well is the closing of a class. So when we say up, and away, it's close up, clean up, line up. So when we're closing up a class, we want to make sure that we're checking in, that they've learned, a quick recap of the lesson, and checking for understanding with the kids. So you're asking those open-ended questions and seeing how they attached any activities that you did with the learning objective. It helps you check in as well as, did I really accomplish the objective I was going for? And maybe what other things might need to be said to reinforce that learning. But the kids usually surprise you. Even those that you think aren't paying attention, they'll be like, oh yeah, that made sense because of this, or they can really attach an activity. And that's why hands-on activities create that fun and engagement, because now they are able to take words and apply them to what they were doing. And it makes the lesson more relevant. So cleanup, we want to make sure that we're involving everyone in cleanup, and not just, oh, I didn't make that mess over there. Well, if we all clean up together, we get to do maybe this fun thing, this fun game, get a sticker or whatever, and that we make everyone responsible for a clean room that we want to leave, and that you're not the one trying to clean up at the end by yourself for a big mess that's created. It also helps them in social, emotional engagement, for how to work together to accomplish something. If you're dealing with a lot of younger kids, you can even use the cleanup song that we learned probably when we were little. It was still around when I was a little girl, and that was a long time ago. Clean up, everybody clean, everybody do their share. That one. So, and then line up. So usually in after school sessions, they're assigned to another area and following your class. That area may be parent pickup, or it may be that they're continuing on to another after school program or aftercare program. So we want to make sure that students get in the appropriate place. We don't want parents waiting for the kids and they went to another after school thing with their friend, or that they were supposed to be in that parent pickup line, or vice versa. So we want to make sure that we are lining up quickly and able to get them in the right spaces. And one of the tools that I use that helps me with names, because I'm horrible with names, is I make little name tents the first couple of weeks of class, and I have them color coded. So my greens are that these are parent pickups. My yellows are the ones that are going to continue on to another after school program. So then it's easy. I don't have to worry about calling their names again. I can just say, all of the people that have green name tags, please bring me your name tags, and go ahead and pick up your backpacks and line up here. It makes it clean and easy and quick to get people in the appropriate line. And then it also gives them a place to put their stickers when I give them stickers for various rewards. So the last part, or the third part that we're thinking you have control over, is that transition. So count and move. So hopefully we practiced that just now in your breakout rooms where you were able to see, okay, we have 5 minutes. We gave you a set time. We wanted that activity to take place. We gave you a countdown onto, how many more minutes you have left so that you could talk about the subjects and then come back and be able to, present with us. So the more you are able to allow students to know what's coming next, the more that they will focus in and then be able to transition. So that can be visual clues. So there's one that I saw where you hold up a stop sign, stoplight colors. So red, you're finished, green, everybody's go, yellow, we're wrapping up in the next minute or two, and red, come on back, let's do it together. You can have a clock or timer that buzzes for them, any number of things. You can do a attention grabber, when they're coming, it's time to come back, or you have music, any number of tools that you can use to try and practice transitions so kids are able to go from one activity to the next. So I just wanted to know, kind of looking at what we've talked about for time management, what are some tools you guys have used in your structures to be able to manage time and students?
I use a clap pattern. I don't know if everybody can hear that. It's a very traditional clap pattern. Dat, 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 dat. After I've given them a couple minutes specific warnings, because I know that students really struggle with transitioning between activities, especially in such a short period of time. I usually do a 5, 3, and 1, and then I'll clap when it's time to move on. So they all know they're ready. Or if I'm teaching cooking, I ask them to wiggle their hands like this, so I know they're ready to go. Little jazz hand. Looks like we got one in the chat. Vanessa said she uses a countdown clock with a fun sound at the end. Oh, I would love to know what that fun sound is.
Yes.
I love fun sounds. Let me know if this is like an app, Vanessa. Put it in the chat because I'd love to see it and maybe use it.
Yes.
Perfect.
Anybody else? With the littles, I used to say freeze. Okay, yep.
Uh-huh.
I use the school chant. Okay. YouTube.
Oh, it's on YouTube. Cool. Oh, Summer, go ahead, Summer.
So I usually do like 1, 2, 3, eyes on me, and then that usually like grabs their attention. Cool. Especially for the littles.
Yeah, especially littles. That's a really popular one among all the different schools too, is 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. I know Waterfall is one of my favorites. Quiet Coyote, big one. But they're really fun.
Anything like a commercial on TV, like bum 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 bum, and the kids will automatically say McDonald's.
Yes. What's that? There's the one I saw one of our teachers do was the Whopper, 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 and they yelled Junior, and it was very cute.
I saw someone put macaroni and cheese, everybody freeze. Lightning McQueen, then say ka-chow. Yep.
Yeah. I love these. These are great. These are great.
Thank you guys for your participation. Make me not feel
awesome.
alone.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Over to Liz.
Yeah, so next we're going to talk about engagement and motivation. And this can be really difficult in our classes because sometimes we have students whose parents sign them up for the class and maybe they're not exactly interested in the topic, right? They might not be a big fan of art or science or math or anything else or basketball, whatever it might be. And so we have to kind of go that extra mile to engage them. But the biggest thing is that when students are engaged, they're successfully learning. So the more we can do to attempt to engage them, to go that extra mile for them, we know we're pushing them right into that learning zone exactly where we want them to be. when we are engaging students, we're embodying passion, enthusiasm, and empathy and patience, because there's a lot of different ways to engage them and meet them where they're at. But the biggest part of this is that motivation should be intrinsic in the classroom. It shouldn't be anything that you have to force at any point. We don't want to force motivation, because the minute we force something, the minute they check out. And I know that's true for adults too.
Summer, you had your hand up? I'm sorry that we didn't see that.
I think it was for the.
It was for the previous thing. Let me lower it. Let me put it down.
Oh,
And so when students have a fear of failure, and particularly one of the reasons they tend to disengage from a class is that they don't think they're going to be able to live up to the expectations of the class, or they don't think they're going to be able to learn what we're asking them to learn. When they have that fear of failure, we're automatically lowering their participation. So what we endeavor to do in an OST program is to liken it more to exploration. In our classes, they should be exploring new things. They shouldn't have the pressure of learning on them. We also need to keep in mind, particularly when it comes to motivation and engagement, that student needs are diverse. Some of them like competition. Some of them like encouragement. Some of them like reflection. Some of them learn kinesthetically. Some of them learn from auditory practices. Some of them learn from visuals. We don't know until we get there. And that's part of the fun of our job, is that little bit of chaos that we have every day. So there's three strategies for student engagement. One is the joy of jumping. The other is gamification. And the last one is mindfulness. Very straightforward. I think the only one not straightforward is the joy of jumping. But luckily, that's first. So we use the joy of jumping. It's an idea, right? When we see a kid, a toddler, a preschooler jump for the first time, do we look at them and go, well, you could have done that better? Why don't you try harder? No, we encourage them to jump again and again and again, because they're experiencing joy and they're learning something new. So we want to embrace that joy of jumping and how we interact with children who've learned to jump for the first time. And we want to bring that into our class. So it's basically an entirely new mindset shift. So we're going from I'm teaching them and they have to learn how to do this to I'm teaching them and I hope they enjoy doing this with me. It's the antithesis to making sure all my students get 100% on a test. It is that I just want my students to have fun while they're taking the test. So we apply this by celebrating effort and avoiding do it better language at all costs. So do it better language is saying like, I think we could try harder, or, oh, that's not the right way. That's not the way we're supposed to do it. Or that wasn't exactly what I said when I meant that we're going to use symmetrical lines today. No, we're always approaching it with, that was great. Do you want to try it again? So instead of telling them how to fix it, give them the opportunity to do it 1 or 2 more times. Really let them explore the activity. We also mark that we want to be proud of progress. So anytime a student takes 1 step in the small direction, no matter how small or how big it is, we treat it the same. Every small step is a huge step. So we're always telling them that we're proud of them. I loved the way you drew that rainbow squiggly line today. I think that's so creative. Always find a way to complement what the student has done in the classroom. When we do that, we're encouraging them to take risks. And I think as these children turn into adults, we want them to take more risks. We want them to think outside of the box. So there's nothing wrong with encouraging that. I think some of the best teachers have you think about something that's really practical in an entirely new way. I want to make sure we're using the joy of jumping. Gamification. I love gamification. I use gamification all the time. So it's essentially just using game elements to increase engagement. This is especially true if we have a very competitive group of students, which sometimes happens, particularly in sports classes and in other classes that just kind of intrinsically give you that competition, that feeling of competition. But when we gamify, we reward participation, not winning. There's a difference. We want to, everybody will be rewarded for the participation, for playing the game versus winning or losing the game. We like our games to be team-based when optional, again, going back to COPE and Jigsaw, really having it student-centered, really having them work together. And applying individual pacing where needing. So that's, again, if we have different groups of students, adjusting the games to those levels. So we're going to talk a little bit about the different kinds of games because I love gamifying. A really quick way to gamify the class right off the bat, something that we did today is icebreakers. So it was the drop an emoji in the chat that reminds you your favorite teacher. Usually something that makes the students laugh or get to know each other a little bit. I know Monique has a lot of great icebreaker questions. Monique, do you want to share one that you use?
Sure. One of the things I use to help me, and it makes it fun for the students, is pick an adjective that's the first letter of your name. So I might choose Magical Monique.
Magical Monique. Something with L. I'm always really bad at the L's.
I feel like ends are
Likeable Liz.
harder.
Huh?
I feel like ends are harder.
Yeah. I like Loony Liz.
Lively Liz.
Oh, Lively's better than Loony. Lively is better than Loony. If anybody else has any icebreakers they use, I'd love if you would share, you could share them with the rest of the group. You can pop it in the chat. As you think of them, just share them because I love gathering.
I also brought up on the chat, Liz, you had said, encouraging words, and I put on there, like, what are some words of encouragement you give to students? One that I like to say is like, you really impressed me. Monique had, I love how you use those colors. I'm so happy that you were here today. And Vanessa put in, your smile is contagious. Those are like,
Your smile
I
is
love that one.
contagious. I love that one.
Mhm.
No, that's great. I always go, I can't believe that you did that.
Yep.
I always do shock and awe. Shock and awe is my go-to. I can't believe you did that. Believe it. They get really proud of themselves and I love it. But yeah, share that. Oh, this is wonderful. How do you feel about your work? Participation art, wanting to make sure that approval lies outside the extrinsic. Cool. Thanks, Vanessa. Extrinsic and nature's intrinsic. Cool. I can't say intrinsic any more times. Intrinsic. I said it once. I think that was my cap for today. So this is the icebreakers. We're going to move on to role playing and character based. This works really well if you're doing a mock trial, a debate class, any specialty classes. I know that we do Hogwarts and Jedi classes. It also works particularly well for historical or science-based classes where the students get to pretend to be scientists, maybe solving a mystery. Anything where they get to be someone else automatically gamifies it for them. So obviously this happens a lot in acting classes, but there are definitely ways you can bring it into your other classes. I mentioned science. All of a sudden, you guys are my scientists. When I teach a cooking class, I tell them they're my sous chefs. I say, I'm the head chef. You're my sous chefs. You listen to my recipe and you follow it exactly. And they get a real kick out of that. We do the yes chef thing in the classroom, which is really fun. And then point and reward systems. I know we all have different reward systems here, but one of the things that I really like to think about when I think about reward systems is like my reward systems last the length of the entire class. So when I reward the students, I reward all of them once at the end. And I tell them they're working towards that reward the whole time. I love doing that. Another way to reward students, and I do this very often too, if I want to do it week by week, is I reward them by giving them a class job. I give them a little bit of authority. Students love authority. Now you can do this in any way you want. You could have charts up that track student progress. I know we do that in our after school programs, the general after school programs, when they've done their homework on time, when they completed all their activities for the day, we give them little stickers. Another thing I love to do is escape room style learning, which is giving them a puzzle that they have to solve. So let's say I'm teaching a math class and I group them up into teams and I give them a list of 4 or 5 different math problems, and the numbers they get unlock a code that opens a locked box. Now, that box isn't really locked, but giving them this idea that there's a timer on the clock and you have to do all these math problems very, very quickly. It just kind of increases the engagement, increases the excitement, gets that adrenaline flowing a little bit, and really engages them in the moment. One thing for our sports classes too is personal progress tracking. We like when they track their own progress, right? Maybe it's something as simple like in a fitness class that they ran around the lap 5 seconds faster than they've ever ran around the lap before. And they keep a little log of that. In our cooking classes, it might be that they finally sliced a banana perfectly. And they're really interested in showing me that, but always encouraging them to either keep a log or keeping a log for them. So you can be like, look, we've done this. Look at all this you've accomplished in just these 8 weeks. That's amazing. So really just embracing that personal progress aspect. So they're always kind of competing against themselves. The best person to compete against is yourself. The last challenge in engagement and motivation is a little bit different. This is attention and mindfulness. So really sometimes when we start to lack engagement is when things get too exciting. So let's say we gamified something. We made this really exciting game. They're playing it. Now we got to bring it back in. And all of a sudden, the kids are crazy. The energy is super high. The adrenaline's still flowing. How do we get their attention and focus back on us? Well, that's where the attention and mindfulness exercises come in. So those are just calm reset moments. Give them a second to breathe in, breathe out, and get ready to go. So you can apply this in a lot of different ways. You can do a mindfulness meditation. This is getting more increasingly popular in schools, is taking that 2-minute mindfulness meditation to recenter your mind. If you do have a lot of students who are just anxious to move, and let's say your class has been sitting all day, taking those movement breaks, 30-second, 1-minute movement breaks to let them get all those wiggles out. I know, I'm thinking about one too, Naomi. And then a tense and relax is also a great way to combine mindfulness with movement. And it's where you scrunch your feet up, tense them up, let them go. Scrunch your legs up, tense them up, let them go. Scrunch your shoulders up, tense them, let them go. And just scrunch your face up, tense it, let it go. And just having them move that through their body. And then the other one is what I like to call brain scratchers. I know we've heard of things like brain teasers, but I call them brain scratchers, and it's little things that help you scratch that itch in your brain. So to talk about that, I'll talk about what they are in a second, but some of the methods to mindfulness is stop, S-T-O-P. So that's stop, take a breath, look around, observe, and then proceed. This is good not only for the students, but also for the teachers. I love a little mindfulness exercise midway through class just to get me refocused as well. And then brain scratchers. So my brain scratchers include a light music playing in the background. Sometimes for some of our students, that light music really helps them focus because it's 2 things going on at once. Fidget tools are really big, and I do suggest you have them. I think they're really helpful for classes like an art class where it's going to be a lot of sitting, drawing, painting, just having that fidget tool, something to give them that little sensory scratch they need. And then also offering sensory corners. So let's say you have a very loud class, a really rambunctious group of students, and a few of them maybe can't deal with all that noise, giving them a separate space, a calm space that they can retreat to. Again, you can build that in any classroom you're in. It's just a small space, a step away where they can take it in, breathe, and relax. It doesn't need to be anything crazy. Doesn't need to be, you have to bring a beanbag chair with you every week, but just having a space dedicated for them to calm down and relax. So my question is this: in a class of 20 very active TK through 2nd grade students, how would you approach a mindfulness or attention activity during an art class focusing on Picasso self-portrait? So let's say they're getting up in the middle of trying to create this self-portrait. They're feeling really antsy. You don't know what to do. What's one of these tools that you would like to use or you plan to use? You can pop it in the chat. You can call it out. All is okay to me.
So you're saying a bunch of TK kinder, you're trying to do a Picasso lesson, and they're all getting up.
Yep, they're all getting up. They're feeling antsy. They're moving their bodies. They're singing. They're calling out. They're being normal
I
kinder
definitely would do the stop method.
Yeah.
I feel like that would first be a great attention grabber because they'd be like, wait, what did we do? And then you tell them, like, take a breath, observe, and then continue with the next step that you're going to do during whatever your transition is.
So one of the questions I asked during the observe period of it is I go, what are 3 things you see? Raise your hands and tell me. It's very common in like courses for like behavioral therapy and things like that to be like, what are 5 things you can see? What are 2 things you can feel? And you go through the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I just take that and I go, what are 3 things you see? And those like, I see Anna, I see a blue poster, I see a car, whatever it might be. So yeah, stop is great. And Anna's going to use stop too. Amazing. Good job, guys. Thank you for participating. And now I'm going to pass it off to Monique for the big one, classroom management. She is our classroom management expert.
Okay, I'm not gonna say expert, but I think that just as a quick little personal point, classroom management is a focus for me is because I have a son with special needs. And so I've always had to think through how to manage my own self so that I don't have him escalate because of the things that are going on in me. And then also how to help him create a learning structure, a mode, get him in learning mode when he has challenges. So that's why classroom management to me is very personal. But definitely when we look at how we structure our learning environment and creating this classroom so that everybody can learn, then we are looking at leadership, problem solving, and definitely patience. And keys to doing that is keeping the students on task, prevents disruptions, support student needs, and the behavioral strategies that create a safe guide. Next. Can you do the next slide for me? Thanks. So one of the things that we kind of look at is the ABCs of behavior. And it's the A is antecedent, or what prompts or precipitates the behavior. And the behavior is what they are actually doing, saying, what's taking place. That's the behavior. And then the consequence. So what is happening as a natural consequence or part of the consequence of what's going on. I used to think of consequence as always bad. So I just used to say, consequence is the price you pay when you disobey. I like rhymes. Okay, so I do a lot of rhymes. But when I was in a behavioral type class, they were like talking about, no, consequence can be positive. So an example would be like if you're in a car and you're driving and you know the posted speed limit is 65. Okay, if you obey the speed limit, the consequence is that you're not going to have to worry about that light behind you coming up to give you a ticket. That's a positive consequence of how you did your behavior. So the antecedent would be the posted time limit, a speeding limit. The behavior is that you drive within that speed limit. And the consequence would be that you do not get a ticket. And that's a positive thing. I don't want any tickets. So that's a way to look at the ABCs through something that's very positive. And then go ahead. You could go ahead and do that. So another way to start looking at, once you know the ABCs, sometimes you may see a pattern of behavior. And you want to now understand why this behavior is occurring so that you can appropriately address that behavior to either redirect it or to help them understand how to get past it. So a way to do that is ABA, and it's a behavioral model that is used a lot in special needs, but not just for special needs. It's just looking at problematic behavior that shows a pattern. And it stands for Applied Behavioral Analysis. So you're going to literally analyze why this behavior is coming about. So you're looking at that antecedent, okay? You're looking at the behavior itself and then seeing what the consequences are. Understanding the triggers and consequences of it. So we want to identify the behavior, determine its cause, and apply appropriate response to it. So if a student shouts out, and check if they are seeking attention or self-regulation before responding, so we can kind of understand what it is. If you want to go ahead and go to the next slide.
I was actually going to go back real quick because I think this little blurb right here. So if an instructor asks a student to read aloud, the student refuses and puts their head down, the instructor allows another student to read again. And I was curious, Monique, if you could explain whether that you think that consequence is appropriate. So let's say the behavior or the antecedent is that the instructor asks the student to read aloud. The behavior is that the student refuses, puts their head down. And then the consequence was that the instructor allows another student to read aloud instead. Would you think that was an appropriate instructor response, or would you modify it?
Okay, so there are a couple of things that you have to try and think through with this, and that's why I kind of went over it, because I was going to get to it with the ABA piece, is really trying to understand if the student is trying to escape reading because the task is too difficult, okay, or that they are an introvert and prefer not to speak out loud. They like reading to themselves, or they, there's different things you're not sure of how to do this. So we never, even when we redirect, we don't want to put a student on the spot. So you don't want to be like, I'm not going to move on unless you read. Okay, so you might check for them saying, maybe we could come back to you to read later, and then you could address the student one-on-one to see, what it is that for them. But you don't just quickly move to the next person. Okay, Liz, can you read it now, please? You want to give them a chance to process that, and also recognizing that student. So would you prefer to read another time so that they are able to answer for themselves?
Thanks.
So one of the ways that there's 4 functions of behavior. And one of the ways that's easy to remember what those functions are is through an acronym, and that's SEAT. So the S stands for sensory, and the student would be either seeking sensory input because they need more to fill their cup, so to speak, or they're avoiding sensory input because it's just too much going on. And when you think about sensory, a lot of people think about the 5 senses: what I see, what I hear, what I touch or feel. Did we lose Liz and the presentation? Looks like, but I can still keep going. What I see, what I hear, what I feel, what I taste, and what I smell. So most people think about those 5 senses, but there are still 2 other senses. Proprioceptive senses, and that lets me know where my body is and what space it's in, so that I know that I am jumping, for example, okay, and that the ground is not under me when I jump, and then when I land, the ground is there, where my body is in space compared to another person, okay? Some people have challenges with, they're talking into your face because they don't recognize personal space. So in their mind, they need to be closer to you to engage with you. And then there is, am I losing? Okay. Oh, you're just sharing, Naomi. Okay, I got it. Thank you. And the last one is your balance. And so that's the inner ear that allows you to know, am I swaying, or do I feel dizzy, or and those things are challenges for some people that have sensory challenges. So maybe they need an input because they're seeking that sense. So I need to have things in my hand, that fidget toy or the pops or different things that you can have, or that auditory, where some sounds are very sensitive sounds, so they put their hands over their ears. That's avoiding the sensory thing. And some of it is more, I'm talking loud because I need that sensory input. So kind of looking at that. Escape, you're avoiding tasks. And it could be for a number of reasons. So we have to think about why escaping, like the person that puts their head down. Is it that it could be a sensory thing, meaning the fluorescent lights, what they've moved away from in a lot of schools, but the fluorescent light is so bright, when I try and look at it on a page, it reflects and it really bothers me. So I can't read. So or it could be, hey, I don't like reading out loud because I don't like my own voice. Or it could be that, hey, I don't actually know how to read. So now I'm embarrassed and you just called me out. Okay. Or it could be we're looking at attention. We're saying, hey, I want everybody to pay attention to me because, I put my head down and then everybody's going to be like, oh, what's wrong with Naomi? She's got her head down on her desk. Okay. Or it could be, hey, you didn't give me the book I want to read. So now we're going to the tangible or asking for something. So that's why one example, we have to look at a pattern of behavior to start understanding whether or not it's which one of these four functions it is. So escape, attention, you're doing something to get that attention. We have videos sometimes where we see this kid and he's putting trains in a bag and then his mom's not paying attention to him. So he starts taking the trains back out the bag and throwing them because I want my mom to pay attention to me. So you also think in a classroom where it's that class clown that, wants to tell a joke that's not appropriate in the time when you're trying to teach class, or is tapping their pencil, any number of things that like there's one down here. Or tangible, meaning I need to get at something that's not accessible to me at that point. So those are the four functions of behavior. And when we analyze those things, and then we find what are the triggers for these things, then we can appropriately address how to redirect behavior. If someone is always chewing on a pencil, and maybe that sensory input is they need to find that pressure for their teeth. They need that sensory input. So now you have toys that they can chew on that's more appropriate if that's the input that they're needing. Or if they just need a pressure, maybe it's that, they have a vest that you can put on them that settles them. So it's a sensory input, but you're finding out what that is. An example I can give, there's one down here. A student repeatedly taps their pencil. Is it sensory, escape, attention, or tangible? What do you guys think that it would be if someone repeatedly taps their pencil? Someone could put it in the chat or just unmute your mic and say it. Naomi, what do you think?
Tapping their pencil. So, their sensory? No, because they're tapping. So it's like a tick, right?
Could be. Could be tapping their pencil. So it could be that they are seeking, could be sensory, seeking that sound. It could be they're trying to get attention, right?
Yeah.
So we don't know. It could be because everybody, if I'm tapping pencil, somebody's going to get annoyed. They're getting attention from that. It could be that I'm tapping my pencil because I'm looking at the student next to me who has the crayons I want. So I'm not going to participate. I'm tapping right now until I get what I want. So until we understand the behavior, it may not be exactly what you think it is at first. So there's a student in a classroom that's humming. Every time we start getting to a lesson, they start humming. And so you think they're trying to get attention because they don't start till you're doing this, or they're trying to escape it. But what ends up happening is it was bothering their ears. So this was a self-soothing way of humming. So we have to analyze the behavior to be able to understand what it is so we know how to address it.
If I'm tapping a pencil, sometimes it's actually an escape for me. It's how I'm avoiding doing something. I'm doing something else with my hands just to keep it, just to hold for time.
Our kids with their legs like tapping, or you can see the movement in the legs. I've seen that.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any examples of like experiences that they've seen in the classroom?
I know I have a student who gets very overwhelmed when the other students get too loud and does cover her ears.
Mhm.
And she hums. She covers her ears and she hums. And that's how I know she needs to take a 30-second
Sensory break.
reset, sensory break outside
Or
of the classroom if necessary.
there's other options too with that is if their audio input is too challenging, they could wear noise cancellation headphones, or they can have just the head, headphones that allow a music soothing thing for them that cancels the noise. So it's different options if it's a sensory input. And then if it's an escape thing, then we start looking for what's a good way to redirect the behavior to allow them to refocus on what they're doing. So, okay, if we can go to the next slide.
I got it up, Naomi.
Oh, you do?
So,
You stop sharing?
process and practice. We were going to do this one, but I think we'll go ahead and do the last breakout room because we're running out of time. So I think we kind of explained these ones, and then we'll skip this one. And key takeaways.
Got it. I'm
Yep.
good. I'm there.
Go ahead.
All right, amazing. All right, so our key takeaways, number one is that you are the blueprint for success in an OST classroom. Every tool you have is the tool that you need for success. Your passion, your leadership, your empathy, your patience, all of that leads to the success of your classroom. The other one is that engagement fuels learning. So engage any way you can, meet them where they're at, plan the lessons around them, really go that extra mile to ensure that they are in that learning zone. They're not in the panic zone, they're not in the comfort zone, they're in the learning zone. To plan and adapt, we ask that you use COPE. It's 4 really great tools to help you handle any number of problems in your classroom. To manage behavior, always refer back to those ABCs and then the ABA and then a C. And those just help create a positive space where students feel like they can express themselves. They feel safe in their learning environment. And keep the lesson smooth with wins and up, and away, and always allow for pacing. Really use the count method, the count and move method to make sure that we're transitioning on time, that we're moving through those lessons on time. So a little bit of a final challenge. Naomi, I know we're reaching that time, so how would you like to run this? Would you like to keep this an open discussion, or would you like to do the breakout rooms?
Let's do the breakout rooms for 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes.
Yeah, let's do 2 or 3
Yeah.
minutes. Yeah. Okay, so your challenge is going to be that you have all of these students in your class. You have one academic objective, and we want to hear how you are going to adapt this lesson to fit the various student needs. You can use COPE, you can use ABCs, you can use ABA, you can use WINS, you can use up, and away. Use all of it, use only 1 or 2 things, and let's see what you guys come up with. I'm going to ask that you share afterwards. If you want to type it up, you can start typing it up in the chat in your breakout rooms, copy and paste it over so we can see it and read it out loud. All right, Vanessa, whenever you're ready, or Naomi, whenever you're ready.
Oh, I'm going to stop sharing to go into the groups, but everybody will have to take a look. There's Marcus, there's Pearl, Ryan, Mac, and Sammy. So just make sure you know what each one is doing. Wait 1 second.
And what time would you like everyone to come back?
Just 2 minutes.
That's at
Probably at least 3 minutes, just saying. I just know
Okay,
that.
3 minutes. There you go.
Okay. 2 minutes kind of short. Okay. Starting now? Are you gonna break them out? Okay. So with the different students and personalities that we have kind of posted here, looking at everyone trying to build this bridge with marshmallows and
Getty.
yeah, spaghetti. What kind of methods did you guys kind of talk about to use so everyone can come out with the learning objective? We can just use the, just go ahead and talk freely.
I think one of the things I thought about was Marcus, who is talkative and outgoing. I thought that for this kind of project, the jigsaw method would work really well. Just kind of separating them by their understandings. Maybe Marcus is in charge of the presentation and Pearl is, coming up with all the concepts and Ryan's help building, and just kind of breaking it up that way would have worked well, I believe. Granted, I'm not an architect, so. Monique, Naomi, any thoughts before we move on, close up? I'm closing it up.
Yeah, we're actually past our time, so.
All right. So learning sometimes occurs because someone insists you recognize the excellence in yourself. Rita Pearson did that TED Talk video a long time ago, I think 10, 15 years ago. And I know that it's still being shown because it's so impactful with her life journey. But it was all about connectedness. It's all about owning your mistakes, being human, and being very compassionate. We've covered a lot of different techniques and acronyms that we've learned. And I was just talking to Liz and Monique about it. It's just like these are things that you just do as you're a teacher for such a long time. And now there's actually, names to it. So, and I'm sure all of you are doing exactly what we're saying and probably even more. So I appreciate you, all of you participating with us. But thank you so much for this. Liz went ahead and dropped off the agenda. Just so you can go back and research the acronyms that we have mentioned, but appreciate all of you, all the great work we're doing, making that impact. Thank you all from Parker Anderson.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.